Why don't you just use VMix? Your setup's too complicated. It's too expensive. And as I would agree with one of those things, hopefully after walking you through our whole signal flow, you'll realize it's just a bunch of inputs and outputs and a glorified ATEM setup. Let's start with some inputs. The Zoom drones. This laptop here goes into a bidirectional Blackmagic converter. From that converter, we go an HDMI into the monitor above it. Then from that bidirectional converter, we also take an SDI feed into the switcher below. And that's how all of these laptops are wired. The same thing you see on the monitor above the laptop is the same thing going into the switcher. Our three main shots are these 4K studio cameras from Blackmagic. They're around $1,500 or so, plus maybe a $1,000 lens. We decided to standardize on these three because at the time, these were the only cameras that you could actually control from the switcher. Then Blackmagic released the Pocket Cinemas with updates, and now you can control them with a bidirectional converter over SDI or HDMI. An SDI cable comes out from this camera and goes directly into the switcher. That's it. To control the camera, we have to have a cable coming from the switcher back to here, and that's how we get the control. If you rock an ATEM Mini or one of those, you probably do everything via HDMI, which can usually transport data in both directions. SDI can only transport data in one direction, data going out and data coming in. Two GoPros, one is here and one is up in the corner, and then a top-down shot. These GoPros we use a lot when we talk to clients before we go live. We like to show them ourselves. It makes us feel more human. We can talk to them, but we can also see everything. So that's our kind of tech world impressive shot. It helps to sell clients on using us. When clients are with us in the studio, they want to thank everyone. A lot of times they thank us, and they love having this shot because it shows not only their audience that, hey, they put real money into this, they really care about the content that they're releasing. It's a behind the scenes shot, so they like showing off those things. Micro HDMI to full-size HDMI to a bidirectional converter into the switcher. PowerPoint laptops, also known as graphics computers. We simply have a dongle for all of our laptops here because they're all USB-C. We have an HDMI that comes out of this dongle, goes into a converter, which converts it into SDI. Then the SDI cable runs all the way to the switcher. Playback computers, also in our graphics section. Probably the most complicated wiring scheme in here, yet it's really not that complicated at all. 3 total cables come out of this guy. One of them comes from this laptop to an Ultra Studio back here. That Ultra Studio then has 2 SDI outputs. Both of them go directly into the switcher. That is so we can get a key and a fill. The third output coming from this guy is for our clock. And the clock simply counts down how much time is left in a video when we're playing video. So when I click on this video here, the clock automatically shows 40, 39, 38, and so on until it gets all the way down to 0. That is a feature of ProPresenter to output that clock. So all those inputs I just talked about, they all feed into one location, which is this guy right here, the 8K Constellation from Blackmagic. This is the brain, the motherboard, the everything for our whole studio, and this guy is really expensive. If there was one thing I would put a lot of money into, it would be making sure your system, your switcher is powerful enough to do anything you need it to do. Everything feeds into this guy directly, and then it has a bunch of outputs. And this smart hub then splits outputs to confidence monitors, to multiviews, to things like that, so we can switch what we're sending to any display in our studio without having to rewire. In the back of this guy, there's also a network switch, which I'll get into later. All of the ports on this 8K Constellation are SDI. All of the ports on the 12x12 video hub are SDI. So this guy up top is a splitter or a distribution box, and it simply takes one SDI signal and turns it into 7 SDI signals. That way we only use one port on our 8K. It routes up to here, and then we have 7 kind of live stream outputs. Well, why do you need 7 outputs? Well, we have a lot of places we send the live stream signal to. Let's go take a look at that. The most important location our live stream is being sent is to our encoder. ATEM Mini Pros are great encoders. They can connect to the internet. You can set them to go to really any destination you want. Usually bring my own computer and I just put it right here. If I need to use OBS, if I need to go to Zoom, like a webinar or something like that, I just take this cable, plug it right in. I might pull the Ethernet cable out and plug it in over here as well. This can be a great backup record of your program feed as well, and we'll get into the outputs going to our recorders in a sec. Let's talk about signal flow. Out of the switcher into the distribution box, which splits a signal to 7 different destinations. One of those destinations is this guy. Well, we have to put another converter on it to go from SDI to HDMI to plug into here. Another live stream program output from that distribution box is right here. Ran it through the ceiling. If we need a second streaming setup, we can always put it here. It's helpful to have a lot of kind of extra outputs ready to go around the studio. Makes plugging things in really easy. All of these cameras also get a program feed. It's how they get signal coming in. I'm pretty sure the data that comes across this cable is on like audio channels like 14, 15, 16, something like that. So this camera is really just getting an input, which is the program feed. That's it. The other feed comes actually out here. So we have 2 feeds that we run all the way from our studio over there into our warehouse. One of these is them. I'm not quite sure which one, but it's helpful to have one back here when we set the backup as a green room. Cables ready to go. We just plug them in. The 7th place our live stream feed goes is to this TV up here. It is hardwired to always be the program feed, which is fine by us because the way our preview program is set up is preview on the left, program on the right. And it's a great way for the clients to kind of see what's happening if they're behind the scenes with us. This TV over here shows the preview. And when I hit this cut button, they switch because that's what happens with preview and program when you hit cut. I would totally replace these TVs. I'm not a fan of Sharp. I am a fan of Samsung, even though they're not the best in terms of quality. They are reliable. We didn't want to spend the money for nice high quality TVs here. We'd rather spend the money other places. The Multiview. This was a great way we could take 4 different feeds, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and put it all into one monitor. What you're looking at is actually 4 different multi-views, all being displayed on one monitor. This is a 43-inch monitor by LG. I already had one of these on my desk. I loved it. It's 4K. I would totally do this monitor again. It's like a $600 monitor or something. Other outputs we have here are the scopes. These are getting individual feeds from the switcher. In our software, we can change what's going to scope 1, 2, 3, or 4. And right below that, we have our recorders. That's another 6 feeds, individual 6 outputs coming from the switcher to these guys. There's a lot of outputs just in this one section alone, but this allows us to record individual feeds. We simply use these as straight recorders. We don't use them as playback devices, even though they can provide a key and a fill. HyperDecks can be fussy with their file formats and things like that, especially trying to like use them and get data on and off of them while they're in use is extremely difficult. One of these guys is, I think, like 6 or 750 times 6, you do the math. So we have 4 other multi-views over here on these 4 monitors. They are the exact same multi-views that are being shown over on the switcher side. However, they do not have to be. And that's where the 12x12 comes in the mix. The 12x12 is sending signal to pretty much all of the displays here in Tech World. It allows us to change the signal being sent to any monitor over here when we're in the middle of a show or we're prepping for a show. We don't have to rewire, we just reroute the signal going to any of our displays in Tech World. The video wall, one cable coming from the switcher through the ceiling to a box down here on the ground. That's the signal coming from the switcher. Then to get it on all these TVs, we have a video wall controller sitting on the ground that then splices the signal from 1 cable to 4. These are all 75-inch TVs we bought from Costco, and then they're on trussing, and I then made these wheels for the trussing so we can move them around the studio easily. They all rotate, so that's nice. It's multi-purpose. This is a poor man's video wall instead of a legitimate LED video wall. Is it cool? Was it cheaper? Yes, it's cool. It was cheaper than a real video wall, significantly. As I would totally do this again for our space, there's a lot of reflections and things like that you have to deal with. We spent a lot of time with our lighting, making sure they didn't reflect off in the angles that we had our cameras, which was a pain in the butt. With what you can do with AR and things like that, like having a dedicated green screen area would be really helpful. So we might actually do that in maybe our next space, or if we end up changing things around here. But having this is really impressive. It does make things fast, and we really don't have to prep much to be able to get this up and running. Whereas a green screen, you do kind of have to spend a lot of time, and there are a lot more things you have to consider, whether this is just a TV, put an image on it, call it a day. Confidence monitors are a couple more outputs we have going to the studio. One of them is usually the program feed, so they can always see what is being sent live on air, while the other one is usually maybe a teleprompter, a multi-view, notes, and we have these other TVs all the way over here in case we need to add in more confidence monitors, and we already have cables routed for those as well. We just have more cables lying around in corners, hiding behind things. Lobby TV 2. And we have another feed coming into here directly from the switcher, so someone in our conference room can watch whatever we route to this TV. I talked about the live stream feed going over here, but we also have a second separate cable running over here that we can route whatever we want. There's another one, dedicated feed, whatever we want. Another feed going into my office, so I can always see what's going on and program from here. Another feed going to Brian's office, so he can always see what's going on when he's programming, prepping. And of course, we have a bunch of outputs going back to Zoom. Sometimes we route them through a web presenter. Other times we have these ATEM minis mounted on the walls. So why use ATEM minis for all of this? First reason, we already had them. We didn't have to go out and buy more. Another reason is ATEM minis can output in 1080p, and we can plug a USB cable coming from the ATEM mini to this guy. All the ATEM minis are on separate aux outputs from the switcher. I can route different things to each ATEM mini. They can all be plugged into Zoom laptops on the same Zoom call, which then means I can get 4 different video signals going into a single Zoom call. That could be a program feed, as well as a teleprompter, as well as a clock, as well as maybe notes or Q&A questions coming from the audience. That's a good reason to have at least 4 ways to send different signals into a Zoom call. Okay, now that we talked about pretty much all the inputs and outputs in our space, let's talk about how we control it all. Right here is our switcher control station. We have the advanced panel, then we have the stream decks. Finally, we have the laptop that runs the control software for the ATEM. It's just a PC. And I know, it's a PC, it's not a MacBook Pro. The PC has a lot of ports on it, been pretty reliable, and it's honestly helpful to have certain PCs in the mix for a lot of random things like PC-only software, or maybe even Companion running differently on a PC versus a Mac. Every computer in here that is not a Zoom drone can actually control the switcher. That's because we have a whole local network set up just for these computers. All of our graphics, our playback computers, our director's computers / music, this computer here, the other playback behind me, it's all wired in to the ATEM via Ethernet cable through a bunch of network switches. I put a local network in here, all hardwired just for ATEM stuff. And it actually has one little Wi-Fi router back here, so iPads and iPhones can connect via Companion or app to the ATEM software. Playback computers, graphics computers, ATEM computers, music computer, they all have local files that we're gonna use for PowerPoint, videos, things like that. So we don't need constant access to the internet, so they're on Wi-Fi. It also saves how many cables and how many ports we needed on every computer. All of our Zoom drones are plugged through a network switch into our router, and then our router connects everything to the interweb. That is how all of our network cables are laid out and wired. Which brings us to audio. It is easily the most important part of your video stream. That is why we decided to keep audio completely separate from our video switcher. It gave us more control, it gave us more options, and then we simply combine audio and video after all the signals have processed. We take a final audio output with a final video output, we connect them in the switcher, and then send that to our final destination. So let's talk about how we build that final audio signal. We have a TouchMix 30. It can handle 30 plus inputs. At any one time, we're really only using about 3 or 4. You want to be able to send a final program audio feed to your switcher / live stream. That's going to have Zoom drone, people talking. That's going to have playback audio synced with video. That's going to have animations from lower thirds or graphics. That's going to have people on stage talking. That's all going to go to your program feed. But that's not the only place we send audio to. We send audio back to Zoom. It is a special mix that we set just to go back to Zoom. What's special about it is that we're not sending audio coming from Zoom back to Zoom. Okay, that would cause feedback. So what we are doing is we're taking a feed from Zoom and it comes into this mixer, and then we are sending it maybe playback of video, maybe our personal microphones, maybe the microphones from our onstage talent. We're sending it everything but itself. And a lot of times we don't even send it music, because when we're pre-show, and this is a question we get all the time, we're pre-show. There is a holding slide or a slideshow playing. There's music playing on the live stream with a countdown timer. And we need to be able to talk to our virtual talent right before we're live with them. If we had music playing to them, it'd be very distracting. We simply pull down that fader that we're sending to the Zoom call, and we're just talking to them with our microphones. To the live stream, it simply only has the music fader up. The Zoom fader, our personal microphone faders, onstage talent mic faders, those are all down going to the live stream. This is how we can talk to the people on Zoom, how the onstage talent can talk to the people on Zoom without actually sending all that audio to the live stream. If you want really clean streams, a lot of control, separate your audio from your video, then combine them before you stream it out. Our graphics computers have audio cables coming out of the headphone jack from the computer, converting to XLR, and coming into the back of this guy here. We also have our playback computers. We have microphones for our talent. We usually have QLXD lavalier packs, so it's those clip-on mics with a belt pack. We have our Shure podium microphones, again, plugged into this mixer. Outputs from this mixer, we have speakers around the whole studio. We have speakers specifically for the stage. We have monitors just for us. We have other monitors here, like this guy right here. It has one job. It is to output audio coming from Zoom 1. It is still routed through here, but it gives us a physical fader to turn up and down. So if I have a lot of things going on and I just need to hear what's happening on Zoom, I could honestly just turn this up all the way and it would be blasting whatever's on Zoom. On top of all that, we have extra inputs so that we can handle random use cases like a band or a concert wants to be streamed from our space. We can plug in instruments, we can plug in extra microphones, and we have extra outputs for in-ear monitors, stage monitors. So that's why we have a whole outboard mixer. So now that we walked through the signal flow of our entire setup here, let's go back and answer those 3 questions. Why not just use VMix? Your setup's too complicated and it's way too expensive. Why not just use VMix? I hope what you got from all of our signal flow and devices here was that we have a lot of backups. Things can crap out on us in the middle of a stream and it shouldn't be detrimental. We shouldn't lose a feed or at least not be able to switch to a backup feed quickly. With VMix, that was one of my biggest flaws, was that putting everything into one machine, even if it was a very souped up machine, very capable, a $20,000 PC, it was still just one machine. That graphics card inside of it goes down, that processor goes down, that RAM gets full, it loses internet connection. All of a sudden, not only are all your virtual talent coming in gone or frozen, the stream going out is frozen, all because one Ethernet cable got chopped or the port went bad or something like that. So one of the reasons I don't really use VMix is the fact that everything is on one computer, which then leads to a really big single point of failure. Another reason I don't really use VMix is because of VMix Call. Plenty of people will tell you that VMix Call is not the best. It's pretty good. It integrates with VMix, so that is super helpful. It makes life really easy and streamlines VMix a lot. It definitely saves you from needing a bunch of Zoom drones. However, there is a decent delay on it. There are connectivity issues. Plenty of stories of people not being able to connect to VMix Call, get their webcam to work, get their mic to work, things like that. Very few stories of people not being able to connect to Zoom. A lot of times we end up using Microsoft Teams, we end up using WebEx, we have to use these very specific platforms that the clients want. Having dedicated laptops that can just change really easily and use whatever platform. If you want to use the word platform agnostic, it's a great word to throw to a client. That is a big reason we use individual dedicated Zoom drones and not one computer for everything. We tried this new software called Zoom ISO, and as it works great for NDI, and by the way, Zoom works for NDI now, nothing that we have is NDI. Maybe we go in the future. I have worries about bandwidth. If you're running everything through Ethernet cables, you really need to make sure your network switch and computers and data rates and things like that on all your cables and switchers are going to be enough to handle how many signals you're going to push through NDI. There's a lot of things I would use VMix for over this system, by the way. VMix can record multiple inputs very well. VMix is really good at instant replays. It costs a lot of money for a lot of the bigger systems, and what you get from them versus what VMix can give you in terms of instant replays, a lot different, meaning VMix can give you almost the same kind of stuff you can get from those much bigger systems for a much cheaper price. One scenario that I would definitely not use VMix for, though, is when I have to go on site physically to a gig and I have projectors on the sides and I have something called iMag. iMag means that you have a camera and you're taking a feed into the switcher and then from the switcher going to kind of giant TVs, projectors, video walls, and kind of making the person bigger than they actually are on stage. VMix has a processing delay, which doesn't really matter when it comes to streaming. You can definitely take that quarter second, half second delay it takes to process a video signal in a computer. That being said, any sort of delay when it comes to seeing the thing happen live and then watching it on a screen, if you wave your hand and then the other hand on screen waves a second later, that can be very distracting to an audience. Anything I can do to get rid of those delays, I will. And Blackmagic was one of the few companies that I liked that didn't have that processing delay issue because it's hardware purpose-built for those kinds of things. That's where a lot of our studio comes from. It comes from eventually ripping down this entire place and taking it on site. Maybe not every single piece of gear you see, but a lot of it, and probably all of it at different times. We will be taking our switchers, our Ultra Studios, our Zoom drones, our monitors and things like that, our hyperdecks, our scopes. We're going to be taking those on site to a physical event, and we're going to have to set them up in the morning of an event, the day before of an event. VMix can come in handy at those points, but depending on what we have to do, how many inputs we need, how many outputs, how spread out we need to be, how many people need to be hands-on, it might make more sense to use Blackmagic gear over a VMix setup. So that's my take on VMix. That's my personal take. I'm not saying you have to have the same one. And if you have questions about it, if you want to talk about it, feel free to reach out in the comments. Happy to do so. Not really looking to get into a debate, although I do have someone that I think is an absolute pro and expert in VMix, has an amazing VMix setup, and I'm thinking about possibly doing a whole debate with him, ATEM versus VMix. I think that could be really cool. I think I could learn a lot from it, and I think everyone else could too. So all in good faith, but let me know if you want to see a video like that, VMix versus ATEM, and we'll see what we can do. If we get enough comments on it, maybe we'll make that video happen. So, but that's just my personal take. I'm not trying to tell everyone to take that take or anything like that, just voicing my own opinion. The setup being complicated. If you take it as a whole, it's definitely complicated. If you take it how we use it, which is small portions, when we do a live stream with all virtual talent, we use the Zoom drones, and we can honestly run the whole thing from this desk here. Playback of videos with our backups, PowerPoint slides, and I even use this laptop over here a lot with the ATEM software on it, and I can just switch my show from here. I don't need to use all the fanciness and stream decks and stuff like that every time. A lot of times we don't use any virtual talents. We're not using a single Zoom drone, and we only are recording on stage talent. We don't need any playback laptops. We don't need any graphics laptops. We can do everything by sitting over there in the switcher seat and just record on the HyperDecks, putting a background on the video wall, things like that. So the space is built to combine a lot of different use cases all together. That's why it might seem complicated. If you break it down, it really is just inputs coming in, do something with those inputs, and then send that to a destination. That's it. There's a lot of converter boxes, there's a lot of cables. But that doesn't matter when all you have to do is think about 3 cables, 3 cameras coming into the switcher, playing back a video and streaming it over to here. Like, I don't need the 8K Constellation to do that. I can just plug this guy right into an ATEM Mini. There's a lot of times when we don't even use the setup. We'll go stream from Brian's office. We'll stream from my office. We'll set up a very small system in the conference room for something very specific, especially when we have to do 3 simultaneous streams. We can't use the system for 3 simultaneous streams when everything separate is happening. A whole different topic being talked about over here, a different topic here, and a different topic here. It wouldn't make sense to run them all through the one system. It's better just to split it all out. Is it complicated? I hope I simplified it a little bit for you. I hope you got a little bit more understanding of why it's wired in this way. If you still think it's complicated, that's okay. It is to a degree, but it's not as overcomplicated as a lot of people make it out to be. Is it too expensive? It's really expensive to get into this stuff. Could I have done it cheaper? Absolutely. I got Ultra Studios instead of HD Studios or Deck Links. We have a TouchMix 30 instead of a TouchMix 8. We have 6 Stream Decks with the advanced panel instead of 1 or 2 Stream Decks without the advanced panel. There's a lot of ways we could have reduced cost in here. The honest answer is we didn't know that at the time. And honestly, technology advanced while we were building this stuff, and it always will. Again, if I could redo the studio, I would trade in or buy cheaper gear in certain things. We spent the extra money so that we wouldn't regret buying it, if that makes sense. I could easily see myself regretting buying, for instance, an ATEM Mini Extreme for only records. Because if I was recording 6 or 8 people and then the SSD went bad or something like that, I would probably lose all that data. And by having 6 individual HyperDecks, the odds of all 6 of them going bad are very slim. Having all those backups and things like that, redundancies, multiple versions or quantity of things, so that when something does fail, which is what we're always trying to prepare for, we're not screwed. Do I regret buying anything in here? Not really. Would I change out a lot of stuff? Yes. Could I do it cheaper? Absolutely. Would I change our workflow? Not at the moment. We've done our workflow over and over and over again. We're pretty happy with it. Micro things here and there. But honestly, the setup works for us and our needs. Tomorrow I'm gonna go set up for in-person talent with 0 virtual talent. The next week I have in-person talent while I have separate virtual talent, doing 2 separate streams. So what's gonna happen? Probably gonna pull laptops from in here and go send them into Brian's office or in the back, build a whole nother setup up there for virtual, because I can't really move the physical talent out of this space. Portability, backups, quick access, all great things. So that's my rant. I've gone on for enough. If you have any questions, let us know. If you have any video ideas for us to execute, let us know. Go ahead and tell us what you think in the comments. Hope you learned something. Thanks.